This is the Italian Citizenship Podcast, hosted by Marco Permunian and Rafael Di Furia.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Italian Citizenship Podcast. And today we, of course, are back with Italian attorney from italiancitizenshipassistance.com, Marco Permunian. Hello there and welcome back to another episode, Marco.
Thank you.
So today we wanted to talk a bit about some peculiar cases that can come up in this area of Italian citizenship. And Marco, just to jump straight into this, where's a good place to start?
Quite a few people in the recent years have asked me if they qualify for Italian citizenship simply because they were born in Italy to foreign parents. So, I don't know, I'm thinking, for example, people who were born to American parents who were stationed here, so American parents who were in the military, or just American parents who happened to be living in Italy and had a child in Italy. So, I've been asked, do I qualify for Italian citizenship just because I was born in Italy? And the answer is no. We talked about this in other episodes, but Italy does not recognize the fact that you were born in the Italian territory, so they don't give you citizenship just because you were born in Italy. To be an Italian citizen, you have to be born to Italian parents. So only if either your mom or dad was an Italian citizen at the time of your birth. So once again, the simple fact that you were born in the Italian territory does not make you an Italian citizen, especially those people who just lived their childhood in Italy. So I've been contacted by people who told me I've lived in Italy for 5 years or 10 years since my birth to when I was like 10 or 15, and then I left and went back to America. Unfortunately, there is not really much that you can do in those cases, because only if you were born in Italy and you spent all of your childhood up to the age of 18 in Italy, if you still reside in Italy at that time, you can choose to become an Italian citizen. That's the only exception that the Italian law makes. So once again, if you were born in Italy and you spend from your time in Italy from when you were born to the age of 18, at the age of 18 you can choose to become an Italian citizen quite easily. Otherwise, if you left Italy before the age of 18 and went back to America, you can't get Italian citizenship by descent. And another peculiar case is the case of which is very similar to what we talked about so far, but the result is very different. So it's the case of a person who was born in Italy to an American mother and an Italian father. So this person would have become a US citizen at birth and also an Italian citizen at birth. A US citizen through the mother and an Italian citizen through the father. Before I go forward, I want to clarify that I'm talking about the case of somebody who actually became a US citizen at birth, because under US law, it was sufficient to just have a US parent, one of the two parents who was a US citizen at the time of the birth of the child, to be considered a US citizen. So in that case, we would have the child who became a US citizen through the mother and an Italian citizen through the father. So there is a consular record of birth abroad that indicates that the person was born with the American citizenship, or even if there is no consular record of birth abroad, as long as the person's U.S. citizenship actually was recognized upon arrival in the U.S. Maybe that person was a U.S. citizen since birth, but also an Italian citizen since birth through the father. So normally the people who contact me are people who were born in Italy and who are in this situation and who now wonder how to get an Italian passport. For those people, it is sufficient to register with the IRE. We talked about the IRE in another episode, actually in detail. It's sufficient to register with the IRE and subsequently apply for an Italian passport, because those people are already Italian citizens. So it's not necessary to apply for Italian citizenship, because there is an Italian birth certificate. The person is already an Italian citizen and simply has to apply for an Italian passport. It's different though if under US law the person didn't become a US citizen through the mother. In that case, if the person had to become naturalized in the US subsequently to their birth, then in that case they would have lost their Italian citizenship when they became naturalized US citizens subsequently to their birth, so after they were born. In that case, the Italian citizenship was actually lost, and the person can only apply for reacquisition of Italian citizenship, which is a different process, which we talked about in another episode, and which requires that the person actually relocates back to Italy. Now, we just talked about someone who was born in Italy to an Italian father and an American mother. Maybe it's worth also talking about the opposite situation, so someone who was born in Italy to an Italian mother and an American father, which I think it's a more common situation. What I said before still applies. However, the only detail that people should pay attention to is if the birth occurred before 1948, then the woman, even if she was an Italian woman, technically couldn't pass her citizenship on to her child. So it's necessary to petition the court and go through a 1948 case to get Italian citizenship. And we talked about 1948 cases in other episodes. And if people are interested in this subject that I'm just quickly touching, they can check out our YouTube channel for the videos where we talked about these subjects. But moving on, there is another scenario which I think is a very peculiar case, which is the case of a couple of immigrants who emigrated with their child born in Italy. So now we have three people: the female ancestor, the male ancestor, and the child of this couple. All of them were born in Italy. A question that I get a lot is what happened if one of the parents or both the parents became naturalized in the US when the child was a minor. If that happened, there are good chances that the child also became a US citizen, in which case you would have a broken line because the Italian citizenship was transferred onto the child from the parents, but the child then lost Italian citizenship and could not transfer it to the subsequent generations. So in this case, you wouldn't qualify for Italian citizenship. However, there are some quite rare cases where only one of the parents became naturalized in the US, and in that specific period of time, it wasn't sufficient to just have one parent who became naturalized in the US for the child to also become naturalized. So it's possible that even if one of the parents became naturalized when the child was a minor, the child actually didn't become naturalized together with the parent. So at that point, you have to check if the child, after he became 18, went through the naturalization process by himself or not, to understand if that person then lost their Italian citizenship at some point when that person became a US citizen independently from their parents. On the subject of naturalization, it's probably worth talking about another peculiar situation, which is the naturalization of an Italian citizen after 1992. So we're talking about like very recent events, because as we know, the naturalization before 1992 did cause the loss of Italian citizenship for the person who became naturalized in a foreign country. But after 1992, that was no longer the case. So there are cases where the Italian ancestor did become naturalized, but after 1992 and before the child was born in the US. In that case, the person actually maintains Italian citizenship and can transfer it onto the child, even if the naturalization happened before the birth of the child. So the child was actually born to an Italian parent. And because the child was born to an Italian citizen, the child is an Italian citizen and can go through the process of recognition of citizenship by descent. But moving on to the next subject, another peculiar case that I've seen quite a few times is the case of a person who was born to an Italian father who was already naturalized at the time of the birth of the child prior to 1992. So that person doesn't qualify for citizenship through the father. However, if the father had married the mother, the US-born mother, prior to becoming a US citizen, then the mother would have acquired Italian citizenship automatically through the marriage without even knowing that. So the child of this couple actually qualifies for Italian citizenship, believe it or not through the father, who is a former Italian citizen, but through the US-born mother, who became an Italian citizen unknowingly through the marriage, but only if the marriage was celebrated prior to 1983. There are other requirements that need to be met, which is, of course, there needs to be no divorce prior to the birth of the child, because the woman did get Italian citizenship automatically through the marriage, but also did lose Italian citizenship through the divorce. So it's important that if there is a divorce, the divorce occurred after the birth of the child. The same goes for the death of the male. If the death of the male caused the loss of Italian citizenship for the woman, if the death occurred prior to the birth of the child and prior to 1983. So, to recap, the child can qualify for Italian citizenship through a US-born mother who acquired Italian citizenship via the marriage celebrated prior to 1983. But also the woman can qualify for Italian citizenship through marriage. The same woman who acquired citizenship through the marriage can now apply for recognition of her Italian citizenship status, again, only if there is no divorce or death of the Italian spouse before 1983. And there could be the situation where the woman had passed her Italian citizenship on to her child, but then the woman got divorced or her husband passed away prior to 1983. So we would have this weird situation where the child does qualify for recognition of Italian citizenship by descent through the mother, who was an Italian citizen when the child was born, but the mother itself doesn't qualify for recognition of citizenship through marriage. But another subject that I would like to discuss is the situation of somebody who has Italian parents who moved to the US and became US citizens before that person was born in the US. However, those people, they then relocated to Italy after the birth of the child and regained their Italian citizenship. I get this question a lot of times. Am I an Italian citizen if my parents regained their Italian citizenship because I relocated to Italy after I was born? And the answer is no, if you were already over 18. So if you were already an adult, legally speaking, when your parents regained their Italian citizenship, because the reacquisition of citizenship is not retroactive, it doesn't change the fact that when you were born, your parents were no longer Italian citizens. Of course, it's different from the case where you also actually moved back to Italy with your parents, and when they reacquired their Italian citizenship, you were a minor, because in that case, you were included in their reacquisition process. Also, there's another very similar situation, which is basically the case of an Italian couple who moves to the US, becomes US citizens, and then relocates back to Italy, gain their Italian citizenship back through a reacquisition process, then move back to the US again and has a child. In this case, as long as you're able to prove that your parents reacquired their Italian citizenship through documentary evidence, and I'm talking about documentation that actually proves that your parents went through the reacquisition process, and such documentation needs to be acquired from the town where they did the process. As long as you're able to do that, to prove that, then you can argue that your parents were actually Italian citizens, that they gained back their Italian citizenship before you were born. So you were born in America to Italian parents, and that's why you qualify for citizenship by descent.
But for example, in that case that you just gave, where the child would not be able to prove that their parent was in fact actually an Italian citizen at the time of their birth, what kind of recourse would they have? What steps would they be able to take to get Italian citizenship?
People born in America who have Italian-born parents or US-born parents but Italian-born grandparents can apply for citizenship through residency. So after residing in Italy for a certain period of time, which in this specific case is only 3 years versus the 10 years that apply to everybody else. But moving on to the final subject that I'd like to discuss today, what happens if an Italian immigrant emigrates to another country different from the US and then emigrates from that country to the US. In that case, you have to make sure that your Italian-born ancestor did not become naturalized in the first country where he or she emigrated before moving to the US. And also you have to make sure that he or she did not become naturalized in the US prior to the birth of the child. And you also have to check whenever there is a person who changed countries, so moved from one country to another, that person did not acquire the citizenship of the country before the birth of the child, because otherwise you would have a broken line. So in other words, when there is an immigration through different countries for the same person or for different people in your Italian line, you have to make sure that each person did not become a citizen of another country through naturalization before the birth of the child, because under Italian law, whoever acquires voluntarily the citizenship of another country through naturalization loses Italian citizenship, as opposed to the person who is born in a country, in a foreign country, and is given the citizenship of that country involuntarily. In that case, that person can maintain dual citizenship.
Anyway, we have covered a lot of ground here again, or rather, I should say in this case, especially in this episode, you have covered a lot of ground. So I think this might be a great place to end off this episode. So thank you so much again, Marco, for making yourself available to talk about this and clarify some points that I know a lot of people are very concerned about or very curious about. So of course, also, if people are looking to get in contact with you for assistance with the Italian citizenship process, how can they do that?
People can contact us through our website, through the contact form, or they can send us an email at info@italianCitizenshipassistance.com or give us a call.
Sounds great. And of course, if you are interested in more subjects like this about Italian citizenship or even about Italian real estate, make sure that you are subscribed to this YouTube channel for more updates. And also be sure to check out the videos and podcasts that we have already uploaded. There is a great little library of content on this channel. And also, if you are interested in these subjects of moving to Italy, life in Italy, living in Italy as a dual citizen, or living in Italy as an expat, be sure to come out and check out my channel, youtube.com/Rafael where I talk about these and also get out and show you a little bit more of Italy. And of course, we have been here with Italian attorney Marco Permunian from italiancitizenshipassistance.com, and I am Rafael Di Furia, and we will see you all next time. See ya.
Thank you.